Good afternoon, Hewlett Elementary School families. I'm Colleen O'Hara. I'm the proud principal. Thank you for joining us here today. I apologize for the slight delay. Our district administrators are just coming from our middle school meeting, as I'm sure some of you were involved in that meeting as well. So thank you so much for being here today as we share our reopening plan with you. I recognize that there's a great deal of questions and anticipation about our reopening. And possibly some anxiety about sending your students back to school, but please know that on both the district and the building level, we have been working hard to develop a plan that holds our guiding principles of health and safety and the well-being of our students and our staff as the most important, as paramount. We are joined today by our assistant principal, Mr. Cohen, also by our nurse, Mrs. Rashbaum, as well as our several members of our district administration, including Dr. Marino, our superintendent, and our interim superintendent, Mr. Flatley, and other members of the administration who will speak to the different components of the plan. I know that parents, many of you submitted questions prior to today's meeting. Thank you very much for doing that. As each administrator speaks today, he or she will work to address your questions as he or she is speaking to their component of the plan. But unfortunately, we won't be able to hear you or see you in this meeting, but if you do have any questions, you will be able to submit them using the chat feature. We'll do our best to address all your questions at the end of this meeting if we don't address them during the meeting. But if you have any questions not addressed today, we will follow up with subsequent meetings, or you can always email me at any time. So with that, I will begin. So our district has a reopening task force consisting of over 40 members who have been working very hard for weeks preparing for a variety of scenarios, including a full reopening, a partial reopening, and a return to online instruction. The reopening task force is composed of many district stakeholders, including administration, Board of Education members, principals, assistant principals, directors, teachers, parents, many of whom are here today. And the work of the task force prepared us to respond to the New York State Education Department guidance, which is a very lengthy document, and it required responses to 14 separate sections. So our COVID task force has been working very hard since June to develop this very comprehensive plan. So I wanted to get right into building practices that are specific to Hewlett Elementary School. Please know that I have been working very closely with the other principals across the districts, including the other elementary schools, so that we can be somewhat in line as far as our practices. But I wanted to speak to you specifically about Hewlett Elementary School. At Hewlett, our students, the arrival, they will be entering at separate entry points. We have designated 4 separate entry points by grade level. There will be a consistent arrival time, so there will not be a staggered time start in the morning. There'll be consistent window of time that students will arrive, but as I mentioned, there will be separate entry points, and students will go directly to the classroom. They will no longer congregate or gather in the gym as they used to. Dismissal, there will be a staggered dismissal by grade, but it will only be by 5 minutes, similar to what we've always had. But just as there are separate arrival points, there will be separate exit points by grade. So each grade will dismiss through different locations or different doors. And we have created structured exit patterns and routes throughout the building so that the students and the classes are not commingling as they leave the building. We will be putting out a specific schedule of arrival and dismissal next week. You will get that in your summer mailing packet. We are going to continue. We're very happy that we will be able to hold the 5 Towns Before and After School program. And of course, just going back to arrival dismissal, we will have ample supervision at all locations during both arrivals and dismissal. And as I mentioned, the schedules will be going out next week with the summer mailings. Continuing building practices, lunch and recess, of course, so important. Students will be eating lunch in the classroom. We will be revisiting this once the full in-person instruction program begins, possibly on October 5th, but to start the year, all students will be eating in the classroom. Meals will be delivered. So if a student would like to buy lunch, they can do that, but the meals will be bagged, prepared, and delivered by the lunch staff to the classroom. So students will not be going down to the lunchroom. And of course, students can bring their own lunch and they will be eating it in the classroom. Recess will also take place in the classroom. We are, though, hopefully the weather will be good and we want to try to get our students outside as much as possible, but we will get classes outside on a rotating basis. So we will not have all classes in a grade out at the same time. Playground, one class at a time, and there will be no sharing of equipment and no contact activities. So we are working to develop activities that students can do that don't require contact or use of equipment. And for as far as recess in the classroom, students will be able to bring in an item, a toy, whether it's Legos or something personal that they can play with during recess, because we recognize, you know, if students can't be with each other, we want them to we want them to have fun in recess, even if it's in the classroom. Okay, transitions. Students will stay for their class. Students will stay in their classroom for the majority of the day. We are looking into planning outdoor learning spaces, so we will have some opportunities, weather permitting, for classes to be held outside on a rotating basis, but for the most part, classes will be held in the classrooms. Special area teachers will be rotating to the classes. They will be pushing into the classroom, so they will, aside from any specials that could happen outside, they will take place in the classroom. Specials such as phys ed and possibly music or art, we are going to try to take advantage of those outdoor spaces when we can, but when we can't, those special area teachers will push into the classroom. Library, also students will not be going to the library. Mrs. Storrs will push into the classroom. Students, however, will be able to take out books, and we are developing a system in which students can, like they do at the public library, they can request a book and Mrs. Storrs will deliver those books to the classroom. Fifth grade, we will still keep our departmentalization model. However, the students will stay in their homeroom class and the fifth grade teachers will rotate from class to class. So our goal is to keep our classes, our cohorts together as much as possible, and we will be having the teachers move from class to class. Band and orchestra, we will not be having any ensemble music yet. No band, large group band, orchestra, or chorus, but we will be having lessons. And so there will be more information about large group band, orchestra, chorus, but that will not be happening. So that's also something important to know. Normally, our students in those programs would come early in the morning. They will not have to do that. So there'll be no band, orchestra, chorus, but there will be lessons and those will take place during the day. At this point, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Cohen, our assistant principal. He's going to talk about classroom setup.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Dr. O'Hara shared, my name is Mr. Cohen, Ross Cohen. For those of you who I haven't had the chance to meet, and for our second grade families, I look forward to welcoming you and your children soon. I'm going to speak briefly about classroom setup. Obviously, with the need to maintain social distancing and other guidance and restrictions, we've significantly reduced the number of desks in the classroom. So what Dr. O'Hara is sharing, there are a few different configurations in terms of the physical space of the room, but what you can see here is a typical setup of a traditional classroom. The desks are spaced appropriately as per guidance. And there will be additional space in the front and the rear of the room, in the rear for students to gather and organize their belongings, and in the front of the room for the teacher to position his or herself to deliver instruction. As you can also see, we're lucky at HES, every classroom is outfitted with a sink. So in terms of coaching our students, guiding them through healthy habits, that will be a big piece of our work. And logistically, that's very easy, so that should students be transitioning from an outdoor recess experience or before and after lunch within the classroom, we have easy access and extra space surrounding the sink. As the slide shares, a typical classroom has a lot of furniture in it. Group tables, large group tables, all of that has been removed with the goal of maximizing our ability to space our desks and then just to have open space for transitions around the room and in and out of the room. We're hoping to have our barriers installed on individual desks and workstations tentatively October 5th. But currently what you see in this picture is what will welcome your children when they come to school on day one. In terms of bathrooms, students will receive a disposable pass to go to the bathroom. That is something that will allow us to track and monitor who used what bathroom. Each bathroom currently is outfitted with 3 stalls, 3 sinks, and in the boys' bathroom, 3 urinals. Our plan is to eliminate the use of that middle stall, that middle urinal, and that middle sink, so that only 2 students would be able to use the bathroom at one time maximum, and then the space in terms of socially distanced at 6 feet is maintained. And in terms of supplies, you will receive, the list is posted on our website, what you should be purchasing as a family, and a lot of that is the traditional school supplies. However, whether it's recess, whether it's the instructional experience within the classroom, students are not going to be sharing supplies. We're going to make sure that if people are handling things, if people are touching things, that those are held exclusively to that individual student. So we're doing a couple things to make sure that that can happen, but at the same time, your children can get access to the materials that they need. So baggies are going to be developed. We're doing that now, where instructional resources will be grouped and organized per student. Some of that will be able to be maintained in the building. And that's going to include several things, even some of the math manipulatives that you would see in a typical lesson. We recognize that at this age, kids need to be learning in terms of tactile use. They need to be touching and manipulating things. That will not end, but we're going to do it in a safe manner where they're handling their own items. Additionally, art supplies are being developed per student, so that whether you are working in art here or whether you're an artist working from home, you'll have access to the same art supplies. And just as I see some of those questions coming in the chat about supplies, if there are tangible items like art supplies, math manipulatives, student workbooks, all of those things are going to be used in the traditional classroom. We will make those things available as appropriate to our online learners. And so as the last bullet shares, there will be a specific date and dates throughout the year for organized and structured pickup for supplies if your children are participating from home.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. At this time, I'm going to ask our school nurse, Ms. Bonnie Rashbaum, to speak about health and safety.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Rashbaum. I'm the school nurse at Hewlett Elementary, and I'd like to speak to you about a couple of very important subjects. Health checks. It is going to be mandated that health screenings are to be done by staff and by parents for our students, sorry. These will be done at home by parents or the guardians, and they will be sent in on an online app. It is very easy to use this new technology that the district has secured for us. If on this form you do select anything that says yes, it will be flagged. When the student comes to school, they will be sent to the nurse's office, where I will do an assessment on them. At this point, I will determine whether or not they are sick or what is going on. They will be placed into an isolation area and you will be called to pick them up. Face coverings in school. At this point, a decision has not been made, so as soon as this is finalized by the task force team and discussed, we will get this information out to you. And this is masks during classroom time. Health practices. The staff will be on an ongoing basis. They will be teaching the children about healthy habits, washing their hands, coughing, sneezing, using social distance. They will be upgrading all of the information to your children, and it will be a constant learning curve for everybody. Ill children. If a staff member or a student presents with any type of symptoms, they will be sent down to the nurse's office. As you know, my office is very small. I was provided with another room, which I will be in, which is quite large, where I will have separate areas for students that will have to be isolated from students that just come in if they have a scrape or I just have to attend to them with medications. When they do come in, I will be placing the child, if they present with any symptoms, into an isolation area. I will be gowning, I will be masking, I will be gloving to do the assessment on the student. At this point, I will be calling the parent or the guardian to come pick up the child. The child will then be escorted to the nearest exit by my office, and the parent and guardian will pick them up from that point. If your child is sick, please do not send them into school. The teachers will be sending students down to my office if they're coughing, if they're sneezing. So I'm just going to go over a few things that you should be aware of, and I'm sure everybody has heard this 100 times already. If your child has a temperature over 100, they're coughing, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle and body aches, headaches, loss of taste and smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting or diarrhea, flushed cheeks, rapid or difficult breathing, fatigue or inability to stay focused in class, or frequent use of the bathroom. Again, if your child presents with any of these symptoms, we are going to put the child into isolation, your child into isolation, until a parent can come and pick them up. We really, really want your children to be in school. They need to be in school. And the district has gone above and beyond in all of these preparations for your children to return. But it is only with your help that we can maintain our building to stay open and maintain the building to be safe. The nurses' offices have all been fitted for isolation. We have enough equipment for all of our children and for our staff. If a child does come down with COVID-19 or a staff member, we will get documentation of this positive testing. Then the Department of Health then takes lead on what the next step is. So if a positive case comes in, we cannot make any decisions on whether or not we're closing a class or closing a school. This direction comes directly from the Department of Health. We take their lead and they guide us. So I hope this is helpful for you. I just want to wish everybody a happy and healthy rest of the summer vacation. If there's anything that you need, please email me. And I hope this answered some of your questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rashbaum. If I could just go back to, I know that as Ms. Rashbam said, the district is coming out with a specific mask guidelines, but I just want everyone to be clear that students are expected, or anyone who enters the building is expected to be wearing a mask, and also in the hallways. Although we are working on the guidelines in regards to the classroom and number of breaks, please know that students will have to wear a mask. So I'm sure many of the children have already been wearing, as we all have since this all began, but I would just recommend reinforcing with your children proper mask wearing, making sure that they know how to wear a mask, being comfortable with it, making sure it covers their nose. We also have these plastic shields that are available, but please know that a student cannot wear a plastic shield instead of a mask. However, if a child wants to also wear a plastic shield, we will provide them. If a child or anyone forgets a mask, the school, we will have masks to give to the child. And if there are any medical reasons why you feel your child cannot wear a mask, please contact Ms. Rashbaum immediately. So, but as Ms. Rashbaum said, further information on the guidelines for masks will be coming out soon. But thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Rashbaum. At this time, I would like to call upon our Director of School Facilities and Operations, Ms. Kim Parahouse, to speak about our next slide on facilities.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, Facilities has been working diligently with the task force to make sure we are in compliance and create the most clean, healthy area for the students to occupy upon their return. So I just wanted to hit on a couple of points. Knowing the difference between cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing, the district is performing all three of these components. Cleaning is removing dirt from surfaces. Disinfecting kills any virus or bacteria that is on a surface, while sanitizing actually eliminates some of the bacteria. Again, the three steps are necessary to maintain a clean, healthy, safe environment for all of our students, and this is across the district. We are very lucky here. We've always had enhanced cleaning protocols, and as such, we have stepped them up in light of COVID-19. To that end, we are required under law to be in compliance with EPA, Department of Labor, Food and Drug Administration, State Education Department, and Department of Health. As a public school, there are multiple governing agencies, and we must make sure that anything we do regarding COVID is in the best benefit and compliance with the health and safety of the student, as well as federal guidelines. That includes reformation of the spaces. As you could see from the picture earlier, we have social distanced the classrooms. Anything that we would do as a permanent alteration does require the approval of the OFP office up at SED, which is the Office of Facilities Planning. This is to ensure that we are compliant with 2020 New York State Fire Code as well as building codes. Again, just to make sure we are keeping everything in the buildings code compliant, fire resistant, and means of egress and entrance are kept free and clear. We also have our district-wide safety plans and our building level safety plans, which are uploaded to the portal to SED. Again, that will include any of the COVID-19 guidelines that have been set forth by our governing agencies. And last but not least, increased ventilation. We are very lucky. We've had complete renovations of our HVAC systems. We are up to code. And in the past, we have done 2 changes every single year. Inspection of the equipment, fan belts changed, motors greased, and making sure our building management systems are in compliance. To that end, we also are able to increase the ventilation through our outside air dampers, that they're all functioning. What we will be doing in COVID-19 guidance is doing quarterly filter changes to make sure we can mitigate any of spread of the disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parahouse. So I know earlier we spoke about lunch and recess. As I said, students will be able to pre-order lunch. It will be delivered to the classrooms. Obviously, while they are eating, they cannot wear their masks. They will be getting a mask break. And as I said, playgrounds in groups. For those students who are learning from home, either in the remote program or hybrid, they will be able to pick up lunch at Hewlett High School. No cash will be exchanged, but you can prepay to have lunch so that you can order lunch. And also those families receiving free and reduced lunch, of course, they can pick up their lunches at the high school, and that will be on a daily basis. At this time, I would like to call upon Mr. Joe DiBartolo, our business administrator, who will speak to you about transportation.
Thank you very much, Dr. O'Hara. We did much work with transportation, and I want to thank our task force that worked on transportation, which included Mr. Cohen, as well as the assistant principals from Ogden and Franklin Early Childhood, and we also had a elementary teacher on our team. So we had many perspectives. We also, I should say, worked with the bus company and the school doctor. As far as what we will be doing differently in transportation to respond to the environment, one is we've expanded the use of other bus companies that will transport children who go out of the school district. This will give us more flexibility in how we could work with independents to meet needs as they arrive. We did include in the survey that went to parents an option to tell us if you will be using the school bus or not, and that's going to help us reduce our loads and manage our routes better. We'll be able to continue to use centralized bus stops as we have in the past, which are typically at the closest corner. As far as what will be happening on the bus and the environment on the bus, students will be required to wear masks at all times when they're on the bus. When students board the bus, we will ask that they go to the back of the bus and seat themselves to the front. And when they get off the bus, that they will go from the front to the back, because this will limit the interaction of students on the bus. The schools have all revisited and have worked on their arrival and dismissal protocols. That's been shared, and that's largely due to the, in part to the increase in traffic for parents who will be bringing students to school. I should note that we work closely with our primary contractor, Independent Coach. We have reviewed and confirmed that they are using appropriate cleaning practices, as well as that they will be taking the appropriate measures to screen their drivers before they get on the buses and transport our students. Bus passes will be mailed next week, so you will be getting your assignments shortly. Thank you, Dr. O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. DiBartolo. So the focus at the beginning of the year and throughout the year, but more so at the beginning of this year, will be on social emotional wellness. Our teachers, our social worker, our psychologists will be supporting our students' social emotional well-being, which truly is paramount, especially at this time. We will be supporting our teachers and staff as well through a number of programs. We will continue our partnership with Northwell Health, who continue to provide us with resources and programs to support both our students and our staff. And we also recognize the importance of supporting you, parents. We are going to be holding a parent workshop, parent forum on September 2nd, and it's going to be about back to school anxiety, how it affects children and parents. So I will be sending out a flyer. It will be a joint workshop with Hewlett and Ogden. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. And it will be run by one of our former social worker, who now is working to support families through this time. Of course, you know, although we are going to focus a great deal at the beginning of the year, we know that social emotional learning is so important all the time, as it always has been. And with that, for families, about our commitment to care. And this year, our theme, we are going to continue with care and try to really reinforce our guiding principles at Hewlett Elementary, encouraging students to show courage, active citizenship, respect for differences, and empathy. But this year in particular, we really want to try to help them focus that to the current situation. And really help them to develop social emotional. So we're going to continue. We're very excited to continue with our social emotional care program. And also with that, we're going to continue our work in helping our children to become self-managers. And we are going to once focus that on our current situation in helping students to be independent in both hybrid and remote. We understand, you know, the students have really been called on to be independent and you know, really handle a lot on their own. So our teachers are going to continue to work with our kids and try to help them to learn specific skills and behaviors so that they will become better self-managers, time management, positive thinkers, flexible thinkers. These are all lifelong skills that all of our children need to learn, and we know that these are skills that we want to help them to transfer on to into other classes and throughout their lives, because these are such important skills. So that's going to be a large focus for us this year. At this time, I would like to ask our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. David Flatley, to speak about our instruction, the 3 modes of instruction and teaching and learning, and also about our continuity of instruction plan.
Thank you, Dr. O'Hara. I'd be happy to do so. So the plan requirements from the State Education Department included 3 modes of instruction. Those are full in-person instruction, a full online experience, and a hybrid of those 2. So the full in-person instruction mode has tentatively been scheduled to begin on October 5th, 2020. We are awaiting the arrival of materials that will allow us to host all of our students in each of our schools. Once those materials arrive and we are ready to go, we'll announce that date, but tentatively, as I said, we are looking at October 5th. Full online instruction, all of our classes will be live streamed, so students will have an opportunity while they are at home to sign into those classes and participate in those classes fully online during the school day. And the hybrid basically splits the kids into groups A and B. While the A kids are in school, the B kids will be home experiencing the class online. So all 3 of those modes were to be available to us. However, because of the lack of materials, the timing in having those materials delivered to the school district, and the number of people who are interested in having full in-person instruction, that one won't be available to us until October 5th at the earliest. Moving from one mode to another, if a family wants to move to the total online experience, that can happen essentially at any time. If we want to move from the online experience into the hybrid mode or into in-person instruction, that'll happen on a quarterly basis, and the dates for that are available in the district's Q&A available online. A little more detail about what those 3 modes of instruction look like. As I mentioned, the in-person instruction decision is driven by the number of students who select that mode. We need to enforce a 6-foot social distance or use barriers. We wouldn't be able to do a 6-foot social distancing with all of the kids in school, and so we are dependent upon the arrival of those barriers. In any event, all classes will be live streamed because some people, even if we were in-person instruction for everyone, there would be some people who would be not able to join us for medical reasons, for instance, and so we would have to be able to provide live stream classes for those kids who would stay home all day. Full online learning, all classes live streamed. Everybody will have the opportunity to sign into the classes from home, and it's important to note that in all of these modes, attendance is mandatory. We will be monitoring the attendance of all of our students to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to access the instruction. The hybrid model, as I mentioned, groups A and B, one group attends in person while the other attends remotely. There's a rotating schedule for this experience that I think I'll be able to explain probably with the next slide or two. And again, if you are in hybrid instruction, daily attendance is mandatory. So the next slide would be helpful. Thank you. Here we go. So movement is an important part of the preparation for any school administrator. I'd like to thank Dr. O'Hara for her attention to the notion that students will be moving in and out of her building from the district, that when they are in the building, movement has to be considered. And then we also have to consider how do we move groups of students in the hybrid model. So that's essentially what this slide is about, it's about movement. So moving into the online learning experience, we mentioned it would happen at any time, and moving into the full in-person or hybrid will be at quarterly intervals. Movement of students during the day will be minimized. That is, students will stay in classrooms and cohorts of kids to the extent possible, and the teachers will move from classroom to classroom to try to minimize the amount of time that students are walking through hallways. And the final kind of movement that this slide discusses is movement on a district-wide basis. Which kids stay at home, which kids move onto a transportation setup and come to our buildings. So that schedule is shown here, where the light blue boxes designate days that A students will be coming into school, and the dark blue boxes designate days when the B cohort of students will be coming into school. And in a nutshell, I think the easiest way to take a look at this is that the A group will be in school on Mondays and Tuesdays. The B group will be in school on Thursdays and Fridays, and Wednesdays will be alternating for those groups so that we have an even experience in terms of the numbers of days for both A students and B students. So that's the reason for this kind of scheduling. We know that there were multiple options in terms of how we might schedule the day for two different groups, but this seemed to make the most sense in terms of families being able to understand when they would be needing some childcare at home and when their students would be arriving with us in school. So that all leads to the question, what happens if school closes completely? So should the governor or the Department of Health or some other agency, maybe the Board of Regents, decide that we need to close school entirely? What do we do? Well, our plan is called the Continuity of Instruction Plan, and it's a little different from in the elementary program from the secondary program. We tried to build something that was developmentally appropriate for the kids. So to look at this from the perspective of a child, our expectation is that at the elementary level, children will spend no more than about 3 hours per day online. And of that time, about half of it will be live instruction with their teacher. That might be their classroom teacher or a special area teacher, music or art or physical education. So about 90 minutes or so a day, maybe a little bit more than that on some days, depending upon how large groups and small groups are divided up by the teacher. And then about an equal amount of time where kids are expected to access lessons individually. That might be with the assistance of a parent or an older sibling. It doesn't necessarily have to be at any particular time of day. It's asynchronous. So students can access that asynchronous learning at a time that makes sense for them and their families. The live instruction, of course, would happen in a very scheduled way. So that's, again, just to emphasize, this continuity of instruction plan will only be implemented if for some reason we need to close school entirely. Dr. O'Hara, thank you for the opportunity to explain that.
Thank you, Mr. Flatley. At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Laura Peterson, our Executive Director of Special Education, to speak about our next slide.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone is well. Dr. O'Hara has really gone through a lot of what your child's day will look like. And if your child has an IEP or a 504 plan, I want to share with you what that's going to look like. Our special class programs for children in class sizes of 12 and smaller will be able to return to school every single day if you so choose, starting on September 8th. We really wanted to make sure that the children who have the greatest difficulties in school have the support to be able to come back, and we were able to do so based on the fact that our classrooms are able to accommodate up to 12 students with social distancing. So in those classes of 12, even if it's at capacity, we have the ability to socially distance the children and make sure that they're able to come in every single day. For your children in an integrated co-teaching classroom, unfortunately, we are unable to do the same for them because we can have up to 12 children in an integrated co-teaching class. That would be 12 children with IEPs, and that would take up the entire class. It would essentially create a special class within that setting, and it would actually be out of compliance with the regulation. So unfortunately, we're unable to accommodate those requests. If your child, you want your child to come every day, certainly we are hopeful that once we get those desk barriers in, we will be able to bring all of the children in. In terms of your related services, all related services will be provided as they're written on the IEP. We are doing our best to have the providers limit cross contact between classrooms. We're going to do that to the greatest extent possible and make sure that all the children's services are provided and their needs are addressed. If your child is at home, and either whether that's because you've chosen fully online or if that's because this is their hybrid day and they're home for these 2 or 3 days and they have speech or OT or any other service, those services would be provided remotely. So the child would log in and do a live stream with the therapist. Any accommodations your child may have on their IEP or 504 plan will be implemented by the staff. Some of those translate very easily to the remote and online world. Others are a little bit more challenging. Some might have to require us to have our staff be a little bit creative. So if your child has preferential seating, we obviously can't have them have a preferential seat at home. However, that is very simple with a Google Meet because every child essentially has that preferential seating. Everybody seems to be front and center. The teacher is going to be right there on the screen, or the smart board or whatever they're presenting will be right there in their screen. That should not be a problem. If your child has other accommodations, needs to be refocused, the teachers are going to work on creative ways to do that, whether that's a visual cue or an auditory cue or a checklist. They're going to come up with all of these ideas to be able to engage your child, whether they're in the classroom or they're at home. In terms of our student management systems, the younger children are using Seesaw, the older children are using Schoology. For our children with disabilities, those with the greatest disabilities, they may be using Seesaw even if their grade level is a little bit higher. We want to make sure the children are able to access all of the information necessary to be able to participate, whether they're home or in school. Regarding our CSE meetings, we quickly in the spring were able to shift to virtual CSE meetings that seem to go very well. We have concerns obviously about bringing 10 or 12 adults into a small room to be able to make those decisions about children's needs. So those meetings will continue to happen, but they will happen virtually. If and when we have to shift to our continuity instruction plan based on the Department of Health or the governor shutting down the building so no one can come in, we would prioritize our synchronous learning for our students with disabilities. We did this to a large degree in the spring as well, knowing that the asynchronous learning really is difficult for students with disabilities to be able to regulate and monitor themselves as they're doing that learning. So we want them to have the opportunity to work specifically with the special education teacher who's going to be providing their services. Regarding all of those services, the children, whether they're home or here, I just want to reiterate, they will have access to the special education teacher who will be their case manager, whether that's a resource room teacher or a special class teacher. In terms of the assessment of children, we made these plans for children in April or March potentially, and now we have this child in September who may have slightly different needs than we anticipated. The staff will be assessing the children, making sure that the goals are appropriate, that the services are adequately supporting them, and that we are meeting the children's needs. I will be putting out a specific special education question and answer sheet, so that look for that in the coming days to ensure that, you know, all the questions we're gathering as we do these parent meetings and as I'm receiving questions from parents either via phone calls or emails, that we're addressing all of them, and, you know, nobody is left wondering what's going to happen to their child or their child's plan. If you have specific questions, you're welcome to reach out to my office or me, send me an email or give me a call, and I'm happy to provide those responses.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. As Mr. Flatley spoke, attendance is mandatory. It is required. At the elementary, whether it's in remote or in school, at the elementary level, our teachers take attendance by subject. Although we don't have period by period like they do on the secondary level, we do take attendance by subject area. So teachers will be taking attendance throughout the day, and that includes special area subjects. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Amanda Kavanaugh, our Director of Instructional and Administrative Technology, to speak about technology and connectivity.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will share that I will be sending a letter out this afternoon to all parents that will give information about the distribution of devices and the internet for those who indicated a need on our registration form. So all of those parents that indicated that they have a need for either a device or the internet will be provided with one before the start of the school year. The dates for pickup will be September 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And again, I will share additional details about that with you. We will continue, as we've discussed, to expand our one-to-one program. Our 5th grade students will receive new Chromebooks this year, and those in grades 2 through 4 will, as I said, be given a Chromebook if they indicated a need on that registration form. We have outfitted our classrooms with additional technology to make sure that the live streaming component of the classes will work well. We are also adding outdoor access points for those classes that will be held outdoors, like physical education classes and/or music classes or other classes, so that those classes can be live streamed as well. Students who are learning remotely will be able to feel as though they are inside the classroom and that they will be able to see the teacher teaching. They will be able to see the screen share of the smartboard or whatever the teacher is presenting. And so we will be sharing those details with you again as we get closer to the start of the school year. I do have a few questions that I received from Hewlett Elementary School, so I just want to make sure that I touched on them. If you don't open, how can we obtain working laptops from the school to have kids do the work? We'll be sharing an additional IT request form that will give you the opportunity to request a device if you haven't done so already in the event of a closure. The process to get a Chromebook, again, like I said, will be shared with you via the letter today. And have the remote technologies been tested? Yes. So we've done 3 different classroom setup testings over the past few weeks with various people involved, including our entire task force, which was the most recent guinea pig for this project. And we will say that it is going very well. We're working hard to make sure that everything is tested, running, and that our teachers will be given enough time to test that out and practice before the start of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kavanaugh. Extracurricular activities and athletics, for us, that's clubs. At this time, all clubs are on hold until September 21st. So that includes PTA clubs. We are in discussion of how we will be able to hold those clubs. We have talked about, if we cannot hold them in person, the possibility of doing online clubs, but that is still under discussion. In regard to parent meetings, I know I mentioned about the parent forum that we're having. Any parent meetings that we will be having will be done remotely, and that will include our back to school night, which will be coming up, and that date will be in the district calendar. So that concludes our presentation. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. Any questions that we aren't able to address today, we will follow up with information via email or through our FAQ, district FAQ. But at this point, if there are some questions, Mr. Cohen, are there some questions that?
Sure. You know, right now, just to share with the parents who I cannot see, we've published, which means I've shared with this group 53 questions. 57 questions remain unpublished. So I guess what I'm sharing is there's over 100 questions from our parents, as you shared earlier, Dr. O'Hara. We will make sure that all of these questions are addressed either collectively, because a lot of the parent questions are similar, and then some questions are very specific. And I think if I recognize the names, we will contact you directly, or we will do the best to share those questions, the answers to those questions anonymously, but to all our parents. Something that I just want to share, because I think a lot of the questions are coming about the notion of students who may be registered for full-time in-person learning or hybrid learning, and what happens on a day that they may not be well, and parents may make a decision to keep them home. So our discussion at the task force has been that, of course, we are not going to disallow a child to access the live stream. However, we're awaiting guidance on how that would impact the student's attendance. So the answer in all transparency would be yes, your child, if they're homesick, would be able to access the live stream. There's no reason for them not to be able to experience learning that day if they're physically capable to from home. However, they may be marked absent. And that would certainly become a conversation, you know, if it was a pattern or something that we felt needed to be addressed on a case-by-case basis. So that was one question. There really are questions, to be frank, across the board. I think the majority of the questions are touching upon some of the differences, the potential differences between in-person learning and live stream learning. Something that we will coach our teachers through, and something that we will coach our children and families through, is how a live stream class can be facilitated with the best of our ability to unite the subgroups of students that are physically in the classroom, those that are only in the classroom for a portion of the week, and those students that are fully home. You know, one of I think the strong parts of our model is that this maintains a whole classroom, one teacher for that classroom. However, we have to work creatively to keep them linked. All teachers will be operating with a laptop sort of facing them. If you can imagine, rather than a student sitting front and center, a laptop will be front and center. And as the teacher is engaging their live in-person class via a Google Meet, they are going to see the participants from home. So just like many of you shared a question through the chat function, if children from home share a question through the chat, if the students from home are raising their hands, if the students from home are speaking via the Google Meet, the teacher will be able to hear that, will be able to receive those questions, and to the best of their ability respond in real time. Children will be working creatively to keep our students in the classroom connected to those students who are home.
Mr. Cohen, thank you. If I could just add that one of the main reasons why we are delaying the opening of school for students until September 8th is so that we have those 2 additional days for staff for training. And a major part of the training, we actually have 4 days for staff with 2 days of superintendent's conference days on the first and second, and then on the 3rd and 4th will be additional professional development days for staff. And a major component of those days will be training on both the technical and the pedagogical aspects of teaching in a blended structure. So that is something that many of our teachers have already started practicing, but we are going to be doing a lot of that work over those additional days. So with that, with 57 questions, as Mr. Cohen said, we will look through the questions and we will, get those responses out to you so that you have the information. But we recognize that, as a parent, there's that anticipation. We hope that you were able to come away from today with a little bit more clarity. If you do have any other questions, you are always welcome to email me. But, I hopefully, I am so excited to get school started, and we are working hard to make sure that it is organized, that it is safe, because we want your children and you to really feel comfortable about coming back to Hewlett Elementary School, but we are just so excited. So I just wanted to end the meeting by thanking you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, you're always welcome to contact me. Thank you so much to our members of the meeting today. I appreciate you being part of this. And please just send your best to your children. Try to be positive about this experience and just let them know that we cannot wait to see them, whether it's virtually or live. We are just so excited to get Hewlett Elementary School back and running again. So thank you again, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions at any time. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Be well.